So, this is Creative Salon number 2, and it's Jumpstart Your Practice with me, Briggsy. So, I'm doing project management for the Culture Co-op, but in my past existence, I'm a professional dancer. So, I trained to degree level in dance. I've not done my masters yet or my PhD. I should do that really. I have been a development manager. I've been a producer. Or I am a producer at the moment. I've been a creative director. I've been a chief executive of an arts charity. So I've done a whole host and bunch of lots of different things. So sometimes I'm able to do my own stuff. A lot of the times, very kind of in the recent past, I haven't been able to do a lot of my own stuff. So I'm kind of carving out time at the moment using the pandemic as an opportunity to do more creative stuff and kind of go against the norm of just staying in bed and eating chocolate, which is what I want to do. So we'll start with as I was thinking, I thought about this idea of states of play. What states do I inhabit when I'm at my highest level of play, when I want to play and create? I've got some top tips and some kind of jumpstart tips. I've got a little video to share of some of the work that I've created that might hopefully inspire you. And then we can have a little discussion based on your experiences. It'd be really good to get your takes on how you find inspiration and how you kind of jumpstart your own practice as well. That'd be really useful. So these are the 3 areas when I was thinking about this and putting this together where I felt that I'm at my most balanced and able to play. All of my creative practice is around play. That's how I see it. The products that I make, the processes that I go through, I always start with play and improvisation, and that's just where I find it most comfortable. When I'm feeling curious, is a state. When I have when I want to share something, share learning, or share a piece of what I've created, or when I'm learning something new. So those are kind of 3 main states that I kind of factored in to when I'm most likely to do stuff creatively. So in terms of curiosity, I kind of thought, so I'd look at something and I'd go, how do they do that? Or how does that work? What materials can I do it with? So I might not have the high tech equipment that someone's created a film with. What can I do it with what I've got? How can I adapt it and transform it and use it to still create these really high quality outputs? What can I see? What can I hear? What can I touch? What can I smell? Those are the kind of curious sides of me around being able to play creatively. The other state is sharing, a desire to share my experiences and pass on my knowledge, kind of a need to bring people together to start a conversation. A lot of the work that I create has that kind of tag to it in terms of actually, it's not about solving the world. It's just about having a conversation, starting a conversation, changing one person's perceptions, or adapting, enhancing one person's perspectives. And then also a journey of self-discovery. So a lot of the times my words fail me, but my body and my creative self through film, through photography, is where I kind of go to as my plan B when I can't say what I feel. And shared understanding and acceptance. So kind of finding that collective that kind of share, understand, are kind of on your same level as well, whilst also trying to, get people who haven't necessarily seen your stuff or don't have the same mindset of you coming in to kind of challenge others' perspectives as well is also good. And then learning. So a requirement of the job to develop my skills, to challenge myself, and to improve the quality of my artistic and creative outputs. So a lot of the things that I'm doing now with the Culture Co-op, I've never done before. So I've never done podcasts or anything like that. So I'm having to learn that. But I found that really interesting. And I'm starting to think, oh, what else could we do with podcasts? And then I'm starting to look at Apple Podcasts and what other podcasts are out there. What's the quality of the work that we're doing? What are they talking about? How are they formatting those podcasts? What questions are they asking? So, when you have a requirement to do something, don't see that as, oh, I've got to do that, I've got to learn how to do that. See it as an opportunity to learn something new and can take that into yourself and throw it out into the other areas of your work. This is going pretty fast, thank you. My top tips. don't force it. So when creativity isn't coming, just ignore it. Go eat some chocolate or have a bath or something. Don't force it if you're not ready for it. So I think you have to be kind of primed and ready for it. When inspiration strikes, capture it. Do it in bite-sized chunks. So what I've found, particularly over this year and through lockdown, is when I've started to think about big projects, I've kind of not lost interest, but lost the motivation to keep it moving. I find what's helped me the most is doing really small, little creative projects that start and end really quickly. And you don't have to kind of go over it constantly or do more things to it. I think when a project starts becoming bigger and bigger, that's things when it becomes more difficult to stay creative and to kind of finish it as well. Product versus process. There's lots of conversations around this. You know, do we create to create or do we create to experience? I feel quite pressured to create products because I want to share what I've done. I don't feel like there's as much meaning to me personally if I just create a process and I don't at least get something out there. But that's entirely up to you and whether you feel that, you know, what's more important. And, you know, in the community arts and the kind of creative sectors, we're always having these conversations, you know, working with young people. It's all about the process. It's all about their experiential learning but it's good to have a product because you're working towards something. You're working towards an end point, so there's a clear goal and set in mind. Whereas if you're just going through the motions and doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, there's the potential for you to lose motivation or just to kind of stop entirely and never kind of feel like you've completed something. So I find that's an interesting thing to think about. Acknowledge when it's not working and be honest with yourself and say it's not working, and that's okay and that's fine. And the people that you're collaborating with, if you're collaborating, it's not working, okay, what do we do? And kind of problem solve your way out of that or do something else. Do it for yourself too. I found it really cathartic to actually be able to create for myself and explore my own psyche and my own experiences. So yeah, do it for yourself too. Dabble in lots, focus on few. Dabble in lots of things. So I've just started looking at kind of animation in film, and I'm going to have a go at that and focus on it and see if I can get good at it. But yeah, keep your focus on a few, because what I love about creating work is collaboration and working with people. So I totally recognize my own skill sets, and I've just put in an Arts Council bid for a project with my mate, and I am not an illustrator. So we've put in a budget for an illustrator, and she's doing the music, I'm doing the film. So, you know what you're capable of, dabble and focus on new things, but kind of have an understanding of where your comfort zone is as well. Be kind to yourself. So know that you're right where you need to be right now. I think that's important. I always feel like I'm 1-2 steps behind everybody else creatively, particularly when I look online at other people's work. And I just need to tell myself that actually, no, you where you need to be, you're doing the right things, people are liking your work, or people are commenting on your work for critical comment, all that kind of stuff. So you're all right, which is hard to do, I think, but getting there. Seek out help from others. So join a bunch of networks, look on Facebook, follow cool people online, so that you're kind of linked into that kind of tapestry or thread of different networks and kind of different creatives. Being consistent. So yeah, I don't know what to say other than just be okay with being inconsistent right now. It doesn't really matter, if you don't finish anything, as long as you have the impetus to do something at that moment, then that's fine. And you'll find that footing, you'll find that consistency as it comes along. Read, listen, see. I don't do this enough. I don't feel like I read enough. I definitely need to listen to more podcasts, and I need to see more work, because that does inspire me. But finding the time for that is balancing the creative time with actually research time. And one of the things that I learned from someone else on a games podcast is, don't do it for the likes or the accolades. Do it for yourself. If you're always trying to push for the likes and people like sending you all this positive praise, it just ends up being hollow in a way, and it's just not unless you've got like millions and millions of followers, it's just not attainable as a thing, I don't think. So if you do it for yourself, and if you're true to yourself and you're authentic in what you're creating, then people will follow you and will like what you're doing and will be interested and want to strike a conversation with you. Jumpstart. So these are my things for jump starting. Like before, read, listen, see, experience. So don't sit in a vacuum. Use online, use the world. You know, so many people, so many organizations are putting stuff online now. It's almost oversaturated with digital content. So curate what you want to see, but still kind of get your little list of things that you creative things that will kind of kickstart you to create more. Exercise. I found that exercising really helps me. I run now and I just find it really useful. It just kind of gives me more energy just to kind of think about the world and what's going on. Move your spaces around and declutter. I move my bedroom around a lot because I'm never satisfied with its order, and I like to things being decluttered. I think when clutter is around me, unless you're a creative that loves clutter and is most creative when there's stuff all over the place. But for me, I like to declutter as well. Stop comparing yourself to others. This is a really hard one to do because I always do it as well. I compare myself to other people and go, why are they creating all the amazing stuff? But again, you're right where you need to be, and you're creating what you can create. And yeah, don't compare yourself to other people. Do something new that's not art related. So learn how to climb, go walking, or I don't know, what other pursuits that are art related that people do when you're not allowed to see people. Go collecting sticks maybe, or do some planting, horticulture, or bird watching. Play games, build a den, be a kid, find that childlike quality, because children have no problem using their imaginations to dream up wonderful, amazing worlds. So play some children's games, have some fun. Find some podcasts on creativity. Speaks for itself. Start a creative project with a colleague, family member, or friend. So you could do like I know one of my colleagues up in Lancaster did a creative project where she would start a piece, she would leave it on the person's door, and then that person would add to it, like visual art wise, and then they would leave it on their person's door and add to it. So there's lots of kind of socially distant ways that you can do this, even digitally as well, if you're not wanting to be in real life. Kind of start a little creative project with someone. It could be a creative writing project. Even though you're not a creative writer, it's fine. Just, do something interesting. Establish a relationship with someone new who has a new perspective or interest. So maybe start a pen pal project. Eat good food, and I've put in brackets there chocolate. Chocolate's not always good food, but sometimes we just need to eat chocolate. I've said chocolate a lot, haven't I? Yeah. Okay. Make a real life to-do list, put it to the side, and then get creative. So once you've got all the stuff out of your head that you're putting off being creative to do, then it's there, and you've got a schedule of how you're going to do that, but you're actually going to schedule in time to be creative or do research around creativity to spark that creative practice. You don't have to do this, but you can do it if you want. So I'm going to share a piece of my recent work, and then you are welcome to screen share. So I'll make it so that everybody can screen share. And if you want, you can screen share some of the stuff that you want. So this is a little short film series that I did that I've put together, but I actually created in 1 minute chunks. So I'm just going to share this. Excellent. Thank you very much. So those were created in individuals. I didn't really plan. So the kind of each one is loosely based around an element of grief. And I wanted to film it in a different way, but also edit each one is edited slightly differently with a different kind of effect, and the music is different. I didn't know how to use. I don't create music, so that's my first attempt really at creating any kind of soundscape thing, and I just used GarageBand, and I just kind of pressed a button, and it just happened. Again, in terms of jumpstarting your creativity, not being afraid of doing things that you've not done before, and just trying and testing and experimenting. Thankfully, I was happy enough with what I came to to actually put it out into the world. That's on my website and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I create. So does anybody want to share anything of their own?
Okay, so I am wondering, Anthony, if you would be willing to jump in and tell us a story, a little teeny tiny story um, about a character that I've drawn.
Interesting.
You want to try it?
Yeah, if you want to share your screen.
Okay. Perhaps this is the first character, and she wants us to know a little bit about herself. If you could introduce her and tell us her name and tell us what she really likes and what she does not like at all, and what surprises her.
So this is Lucy, and Lucy is a medium. So she spends a lot of her time at carnivals reading people's fortunes. And what she really loves is when she really loves it when she gets people coming and opening their hearts to her, because she finds it really easy to then kind of guide them on their next path. What she finds really difficult is that there is so much negativity in the world and so many people with closed minds, and she just wished that everybody would be more open. What surprises her, Jaffa cakes that aren't orange based.
That's fantastic.
Where are you from, Rebecca?
I'm from San Francisco.
Do you have Jaffa cakes in San Francisco?
No. Well, maybe I do, but I don't know that I do.
So they're like little round things. They're more of a cake than a biscuit, but they have like a bit of kind of jelly preserve on the top, and they're covered with chocolate. And they started bringing out different brands, but orange are the best, obviously. So that's what surprises her, which would surprise me.
Because they all look the same, don't they? Until you bite into them, and then it's lime. No!
All right. Well, thank you for introducing us to Lucy. Who would like to go next?
I'll have a guess.
Okay.
Fantastic.
All right. So if you could introduce us to this character, tell us this character's likes, dislikes, and what surprises this one.
Okay, right. Let's have a think. These are beautiful illustrations. Okay, I'm going to call this person is going to be called Roger. What Roger likes to spend the end of the day looking out at the sunset, and he likes to watch the sun go down, and every day he likes to collect all the colours. Every sunset he sees is different. He likes to collect the colours, and perhaps he likes to mix the colours in a little notebook and paint the colours so he doesn't forget them. Because every time he sees it, it's different. What he doesn't like when his view is interrupted by other people. He likes to have a nice clear view all the time when he's watching his sunsets. But also in his life, he likes to have a nice clear horizon, so he likes to know where he's going and what he's doing. And what surprises him when different people tell him that they saw something different when they watched the sunset, and everyone sees something different, and he's always surprised that he can look at the same sunset from a completely different angle and see something completely different that he never would have thought of.
Thank you. Hello, Roger. All right, next.
So maybe I'm going to go for Leon as the name. And what he likes is Looking at that, it looks to be like a mathematician. It looks like a chalkboard behind him. So I'm going to say that he likes teaching and showing other people how to do things. And what he dislikes is when people are not willing to learn. And what surprises him is people are narrow-minded. People who are narrow-minded and who are closed off from experiences. He finds that surprising because he is so open.
So his name is Max. My name is Max. And I've had my nose broken. People wouldn't know about me that I have seen the Northern Lights more than 100 times. And I just like deserts. And what surprises me is deserts can look like waves, which look like Northern Lights. Thank you.
Wonderful. That was really interesting.
Thank you very much. That was really insightful. Hard times, and really kind of, I really drew from myself a lot as well. Does anybody want? David, did you want to share something?
I was just looking to see if I can find something that's worthy of sharing, really.
Phil, did you want to share anything?
I would, but I can't seem to do it on my phone.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
But if you do want to go to my YouTube channel or to share my latest work, I don't know.
I will find you, and I will put it in the chat.
Well, I can talk a little bit about why I thought about people telling stories about my pictures.
Okay.
I often wonder, how can I get people more engaged in my artwork? I mean, there's many, billions of images, and you can get people just scrolling by. But if they can be invest a bit of themselves in the images, there's like more engagement. But also, I'm more engaged with the characters, and they become more meaningful to me when other people have had relationships with them. And I've also done of course, like just showing pictures, what ways do people usually share about them? They could talk about the aesthetic qualities, or they could talk about how it reminds them of something, or what it makes them wonder. I mean, that would be more on the creative end, but what's something a little bit beyond, like, I like it, I don't like it. I've also shown some pictures on Zoom that I asked people to make songs. There were a lot of composers in that group, so they made music to some of the patterns I drew. And I've also had some poets write, I am the one who, like 7 times I'm the one who, 7 times I'm the one who. And then they look at the image and they say, I am the one who, loves the Northern Lights. And so then there's like a little poem about like each of the characters. So I've been thinking quite a bit about that, like words, music, stories, as a way of like fostering engagement.
And it seems like doing it collectively with other people. So you're creating your art, but you're fostering connections with other people to kind of create more meaning for them and for you as well. Like, just going back to what you said about people being more invested in your work by creating character stories. I found that as I was trying to create this story for Lucy, I was seeing the picture more. I was looking at it more. I was becoming more invested and more linked to that picture as I was developing that narrative in my head. So that's really powerful, I think. Even as kind of a marketing tool to kind of sell your work more.
Well, I can't remember which director it was, but he never truly explains what his movie is about because he likes leaving it open to interpretation. So it's a lot more personal for the individual, and then it's not so finite.
I would imagine that quite quite a
Yeah,
lot of directors do that.
whether, like, for instance, as the maker, whether my artist, I mean, my story is more important than anyone else's story about it. I actually don't believe so, but I do believe that people like to hear stories.
Just picking up on your comment there about people liking stories, but historically that's how information would pass, like such as the Bible and everything. It would pass through stories because there wasn't mediums that we have nowadays like movies and pictures and things. So it would pass through stories. Whereas now we've just got the internet and we can look, so maybe we have access to too much information sometimes.
I thought, like, I'll make my work to maybe understand my own feelings. And after a week or a month or a year, I have, maybe it was sort of like a future message, the character, and then I find out that it sort of like a dream, it brings wisdom that I hadn't been conscious of, before that point. And even as I'm making it, I'm not that aware of, but I make it and learn something about it afterward.
Yeah, I think whenever I've been making work, whether it's a lot of my work these days is quite corporate related, but a lot of it is storytelling in some way. They often have this sort of almost like obsession, almost like the overriding feeling is to capture the right story, capture when I'm trying to tell someone's story or trying to tell, even if it's just something as simple as literally writing someone's experience or story, there's always some sort of push to make sure you get the right story. But the thing is, every time someone reads it, they find a different story. They find it always has a different impression on yourself. So especially when I'm doing stuff like that, sometimes helps to sort of take the pressure off to make sure you find the right story. It's just to realize that everyone's going to have a different experience of that story. It's never going to be exactly how you want it to be experienced. Or, I mean, you can aim for it and you can make sure that all the elements are there, but there's always going to be an individual's unique interpretation of it that's always going to color it in some way. Right, I've got a story I could show. I did a little video a while ago about, again, it was a little mini documentary trying to capture the experience that some people had over a dance project that I did. Well, so that was sort of just a small commission to do a bit of documentary work on an existing dance project. It's different everywhere it's performed, but it was nice to be involved with it. But again, it was like during that whole experience, my sort of like overriding sort of distraction from being truly creative, I suppose, was this must capture everything, must make sure I get every detail and every nuance and everybody's perspective in it. And it was kind of it was a lovely experience just to be in and around those people as they were making that piece of work. And but it took me just a little while to sort of shed that worry that I wasn't representing it correctly. There is no right way to represent their story because everybody in that room was having a different experience anyway. So as long as I was trying my best to showcase people who were involved and the process they went through and the experience they had, it was a valid story. It just doesn't necessarily mean it was everybody's story, but they had a good chance of being represented well. So it's fun.
So my question from that is, can creativity be wrong? Can we go wrong with creativity? Or is what happens, can the creative practice go wrong for us as creative individuals? Because it sounds there like obviously you had a brief and you wanted to make sure that you kept to that brief, but it went even beyond that of making sure that you kind of captured everyone's voice, opinions, thoughts, feelings, and the fact that you might go wrong kind of prevented you potentially from really getting stuck in, even though it's a beautiful piece and I really enjoyed it and I feel like you captured everything. But can we be wrong?
I suppose you can when you, whatever you're creating, whatever medium, whether it's video, illustration, writing, or whatever it is, I suppose you can always perhaps stray to a degree where you, I say cause offense, but that's just part of the creative process. Some people are going to react badly to it. That's fine. I suppose you can get the brief wrong if it's something that's a bit more commercial, and that can be problematic. But as long as you're trying to make something that is like it brings the feeling and the feeling of the experience to life, in the case of a documentary, then I suppose you can't really be wrong. I mean, there's issues like around quality and whether you've used the right tools and stuff. But again, that's more or less down to personal preference, really. The story's going to be different every time. So,
because one of my questions is, what gets in the way? What stops us from creating in the first place before we even get to the point of having a kind of a jar in our creative practice? What are the things that gets in the way for some people? And you can all contribute to this. What's kind of gotten in the way of you kind of being creative, particularly in the last kind of year?
I suppose in the last year or so, I mean, especially over where I am at the moment, there's been just as much a need to tell stories, to keep people informed of how you're doing, especially when there's lockdowns in place and stuff like that. It's perhaps made it more important to tell stories. I think perhaps people might feel their story is of less worth these days, so they don't necessarily want to put it out there or find a creative outlet for it because they see other people in perhaps more extreme positions, going through more trying times. So they might think, oh well, my story's pretty tame. It doesn't compete. So they shy away from sharing in whatever medium they prefer, whether it's just sharing a thought online, sharing a picture, writing a poem. But I think it's whether or not you share it with anybody, and whether or not you're able to overcome, like you said in your top tips about not comparing yourself to other people, whether you're able to overcome that or not. I think it's still important that when you feel that creative urge, that creative fire, to do something with it, whether you share it with other people or not. I think that can be hugely beneficial for people.
So I'm going to direct this at you, Phil. Sorry.
Okay.
What stops you creating for yourself?
Well, I think if everyone's honest, it just boils down to a fear, like a fear of like not being good enough, and a fear of not rejection, but a fear of like critique and a fear of, do you know what I mean? So for me, that always plays into it a lot when I'm creating. Fear of ridicule. Like, am I going to get made fun of over this, or will it be understood?
Have you ever done something for yourself creatively and not thought about sharing it, or is the driver to create that product to share?
Because I have, like, in terms of music, I have like hundreds of tracks that I've created that nobody's ever heard and nobody ever will hear, because I don't think they're at a level to share. But then some of the tracks, like, I think are good enough. And same when I was doing the vlogs, like, I always thought, what is the purpose of doing these? And it was more to, and I kind of went like this. So was it to educate? Was it to show? What was there? Was it, kind of lost the reason and the focus?
Maybe it was you sharing your love of what you're vlogging about.
Yeah.
It could just be as simple as that.
Well, especially on that last one, that was more just about editing. Like, I really enjoyed the editing process more than anything, and it wasn't, yeah.
Rebecca, I've got a question for you, if you don't mind. As creative individuals, what happens when we do nothing?
My challenge right now is more showing things. So I make a lot of things, but I show less things. So what would happen if so I'm feeling closer to that right now. So what would happen if I didn't show things? Well, then I'd never meet you or have any kind of engagement, and collaboration is the fun part of life. So I wouldn't have like play with other people, collaboration.
What happens if we did nothing, if we didn't create? So
Yeah.
if we stopped?
Well, I don't think that's possible because my dreams are going. I think everyone dreams. So
Yeah, good point. Sort of natural imagination and creation, just automatic. It's just it just happens, doesn't it? So you can't not be a little bit creative. It's a really good point. I like that.
I've got an add-on to that. So they define like anxiety and mental health as people being really creative because they're imagining all sorts of scenarios in the head, such as ways that people will harm them. So that is the mind automatically being creative.
Just not necessarily sometimes it's not necessarily in a hugely positive way, which is, but I think as we've covered that just having, even if it's just creativity for creativity's sake for yourself, becomes a positive sort of benchmark for yourself.
Like I share my work. I rarely create and not share. I always work to share. So maybe I need to go back to my creative practice and try and think about creating without sharing, and what does that do to igniting my creativity.
I suppose if you get to the point where you create for yourself for a while and let certain ideas come and go, and sort of different manifestations of the idea, different iterations of the idea, until you get to the point again where you feel like sharing is suddenly the right thing to do again. That's a nice sort of internal journey for yourself, because like Rebecca's saying, if you don't share, then sometimes, I mean, you're going to have implications there, aren't you, about whether it becomes too insular or too sort of esoteric that loses its meaning without having that input from people. I think but I think, like you both mentioned, about having it when it feels right to share is something that's important. It's something that I haven't really done a lot lately. Most of my sharing is like this sort of commercial work or day job work. It's sharing creativity, but it's hidden amongst sort of a veneer of the day job or the corporate sort of brand and working on that kind of thing. But
do you find that easier than to put work out there because it's not coming out as you, it's coming out as the brand?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's perhaps something that I've steered away from lately, but just having this conversation with you three about just why sharing is important, suddenly sort of lit a fire under me about, actually, I could put something together that I've been thinking about for a while. I could share that. That would be a nice experience and a story in itself to actually share. Just going through that motion of, okay, let's put this together. We know it's a nice idea. Let's see what people think. That experience in itself, I think, would be probably beneficial. It's strange how just something that sounds so simple, sharing your work, then getting someone to react to it, how that suddenly, whether it's because of the pandemic and how people are becoming very different about the way they think about themselves and work. Maybe it's not occurring to me to be that obvious, but it's nice to have that sort of prompt to get going again. I like that.
I think we all need validation as human beings. I think we all seek validation in one way or another, and I think as a creative individual, sharing your work is that sense of validation, whether positive or negative, on how you choose to take on that information. We've got a few minutes left. We'll aim to finish at 8:30. I just wanted to ask you all, I kind of got a sense from Rebecca what kind of practical strategies and things that you do to kind of jumpstart your creative practice by characters telling stories and getting other people and collaboration and all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to open it out further and just get a sense of, from all of you, what practical things do you do or have you done in the past to kind of get in that creative mind space?
I think for me, I try and break the monotony. So things like at the minute, I'm going to work, exercising, going to work, exercising, going to sleep, and it just seems very. So once you break that and you do something completely different, I think then inspiration comes.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then if like I'm writing music, I go for more like what do I want to tell, and what message am I trying to put out, and what feeling am I wanting to put out. Then I go from there and like write how I feel, and then try and make it melodic. That's what I do. Yeah.
Well, I like challenges. I particularly like 30-day challenges, particularly with like prompts or themes. And I really like to be in Facebook groups that have challenges, because then I like posting every day and I can see other people who are also committed to it. And then I also commit to commenting on the people who are into it also. And that just gives me a little more energy or enthusiasm. 30-day challenges are groovy. I've done a 100-day challenge twice.
Wow.
I like that too, but 30-day challenges are great. And then I like to print my 30-day challenges in chat books. So I know that I've like done it, and I can see what things are.
You have a nice record of it. It's not lost out there. It's kept.
Because even with David, even with the more commercial stuff and charity-based stuff that it is creative. So when you sit in front of your computer thinking about graphic design and stuff, what do you do? What's your space look like? Do you know what?
So I think a lot of what I've been doing lately, especially when it comes to sort of the day-to-day work, which isn't not always creative, but you try and find ways to make it creative, because rather than just put up a social media post about the latest campaign or the latest offer that we have on or something like that, it's good to get down to coming back to story, find the story in it, find why we're doing it anyway. So a lot of what I do is kind of fundraising based. So I work for a charity, and we have to find funds for specific projects and for specific bits of equipment and things. And we normally manage to raise the funds, but sometimes the times where it works, the times where you think you get people behind the idea and behind the organization and behind the campaign, is when you just tell a story. You don't necessarily spend too long creating a unique brand identity and all these lovely things around it. You focus on the story. To find the story in the campaign and lead with that, and that keeps it authentic, which is super important, I think. And I think if you start with the story of whatever you're working on, especially if it's commercial, then the creativity just flows, because you're just telling a story. It makes it so much simpler, and that can help the whole thing be far more successful, because it's honest. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, if it's tell a story in whatever sort of project you're doing, or find a story, because sometimes you get given like a brief or given a challenge, I suppose, and it's like you don't necessarily see the story straight away, so you have to invent one or find it. That can be an interesting thing, because that can lead to some interesting conversations. It's going to find, and you'll find the influence you need in that. So yeah, there you go.
Another one for me is I try and replicate. So if I've heard something on a song, I think, I'll try and replicate that. And then it ends up being like slightly different, and then you play with that and run with it, and then you just play along, and then it goes back to what you were saying about play.
It's a good place to start, isn't it? Especially when you're trying something new. Is if you don't necessarily want to copy stuff, but but finding influences and finding a new direction to go in. Sometimes it helps to say, right, I really like that piece of work, or I really like that design, I really like that thing. Let's see if I can replicate that to begin with, see what the process is, see what it feels like, and see if that takes me in a new direction. Yeah, cool way of kickstarting it, definitely.
See, for one of my songs, it was, do you remember Fuji's Ready or Not? That you try to make a noise similar to that, and then ended up making this whole hip hop kind of sounding beat, and then it grew from there without actually breaking any copyright laws.
Always got to be careful. That's awesome.
Well, recently I broke a personal taboo, which is I cut my own hair. And I found that when I was looking in the mirror, it was kind of confusing because of to get the right angle because of the reverse image in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that looking in the mirror was confusing, but actually closing my eyes and feeling like whether the sides were symmetrical or how long they were, I did better by feel cutting my hair than looking. And so then I started thinking like, wow, what could I do, like closing my eyes? Could I make pancakes?
That's brilliant.
And then I thought like, wow, I will have a really different experience of this place I've been sheltering in place for forever if I, went even 15 minutes with my eyes closed, or so that using a different sense.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it.
Sounds a bit like a mindfulness exercise that you're really aware of the moment.
I think it turned out okay. I keep my hair. I keep cutting it, so it's like a new pastime. I will run out of hair after a while, so I gotta cool it.
Will you go back to having it cut at the hairdressers when you're allowed to?
Well, I think that I'll cut it myself. Although the pleasure of going to the hairdressers, there's that too.
One of the just watching David's videos, one of the things that I really miss is, other than being with people, but is dancing with people and moving with people and talking with people and touching people, being in contact with people. One of the things that I saw a couple of weeks ago was the language of even the term social distancing, implying that you are distancing socially, not physical. Not what they mean is keeping a physical distance, but what they're wanting to get people to do is not be social, because obviously when you're social, you tend to be in close proximity. But just that the use of that term has just, for me, really affected the way that I potentially am going to be with people when we get back in the real world.
I think it's the exchange the word social for safe. So safe distancing. You're safe at home. You're not locked down. You can go out. So it's keeping yourself safe, and you just think of it in those terms.
I think it's because they probably printed up like 100 million stickers that said social distance. They couldn't change it. So branding was already done.
So maybe there's something around when you're trying to kickstart your creativity is thinking about the positive language that you can use. So asset-based language rather than detrimental. I don't know what the term is. Deficit language. So it's asset over deficit language.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's one of the things we have to think about a lot, sort of in day-to-day stuff with some of the campaign stuff we have to do, is to be very mindful about what the ask is. If we're asking if we're trying to raise money on a campaign, be careful how you ask for it. You're going to get a better reaction if you're mindful of what language is used. I mean, that's fairly common sense, but some people just don't necessarily realize that all the time, or become a little bit sort of blasé about their language choice. It's interesting how that's going to have to how I think people are more aware of the effect of language, having watched so many press conferences from leaders about COVID and stuff in the last year, and people are becoming a lot more expert at picking out some of the nuances. Normally, we see a press conference, whether it's Boris Johnson over here or someone else in America now, and you normally rely on, say, the press to sort of pick it apart what they said and to do an analysis. I think people have gotten really switched on during this and can read between the lines themselves throughout all of this. So when it comes to post-COVID life, when we're allowed out again and things come and there's a new normal, perhaps people won't be quite as naive as they were before. They'll be able to sort of decipher what you're trying to say a little bit easier. Might make things harder actually to sort of, because you don't want to necessarily, you want to, like when you tell a story or you produce a campaign or something like that, you don't necessarily want to be overtly manipulating someone, but you want someone to take a decision, to make an action, to either like your work, share your work, contribute to your work, or in this case of something commercial, support something. You just might have to be extra mindful that people are smarter about it.
Thank you very much. I will see you all later.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.